They told you Atlantis was a myth, a story, a metaphor. They called it a legend, a fantasy told by ancient philosophers. But what if it wasn't? What if Atlantis was real, advanced, powerful, and destroyed not by nature, but by knowledge they weren't meant to carry? Because the story of Atlantis isn't just about a sunken city, it's about a forgotten version of humanity. One they don't want you to remember. The earliest known account of Atlantis comes from Plato, who described it in vivid detail over 2,000 years ago. He wrote of a massive island nation, highly intelligent, highly advanced, and spiritually evolved. A place with crystal technology, energy temples, and a connection to the stars. A civilization in contact with forces far beyond modern understanding. But then, in a single day and night, Atlantis vanished, flooded, destroyed, erased. Or so they say. But here's what you were never told. Plato wasn't creating fiction. He claimed to be passing down an oral tradition, a memory carried by Egyptian priests for thousands of years before him. A memory of a real civilization that rose too fast, too far, and paid the price. And if you listen closely, you'll hear that story echoing across ancient cultures, each with their own version of a lost golden world. Atlantis isn't one place. It's a pattern, a cycle, a warning, a symbol of what happens when great power isn't matched with great wisdom. And here's what they really don't want you to know. That same pattern is repeating now. Look at the world. Technological advancement without spiritual balance. Knowledge without accountability. Control without connection. Sound familiar? Atlantis didn't die in one night. It collapsed in stages, from the inside out. And that's what we're here to explore. Not just what happened to Atlantis, but what Atlantis really was. In Part 2, we'll dive into the true origins of the Atlanteans, where they came from, how they gained their power, and what ancient sources reveal about their non-human knowledge. Atlantis was never just a city. It was a consciousness. And it's waking up again. Before Atlantis fell, before it rose to power, before even Plato spoke its name, it already existed in whispers. Not just as a city, not just as an island, but as a bloodline, a species, a different kind of human. The Atlanteans weren't like us. Not entirely. And that's the part of the story they erased. Ancient texts, mystery schools, and esoteric sources all point to the same possibility. Atlantis was seeded. By who? Some call them the Star People. Others say the Anunnaki. Some say they came through the Sirius or Orion gateways. But one thing is consistent. They didn't evolve here like we did. They arrived, with knowledge, with purpose, and with a mission to bring divine intelligence into form. Atlanteans were not gods, but they were godlike in what they knew. They had access to advanced sound and crystal technologies, energy manipulation, light-based healing, telepathic communication, control of matter through vibration, stargates and portals connecting Earth to other systems. This wasn't science fiction. It was sacred science. And they didn't discover it. They remembered it. They built temples aligned with constellations. They harvested energy directly from the earth. They lived in frequency harmony with nature, with the stars, and with themselves. For a while, it worked. Atlantis was a golden age, until it wasn't. Because knowledge, untempered by humility, turns toxic, and power, without spiritual grounding, becomes self-destruction. Atlantean society split into two factions. One, those who served the light, keepers of wisdom, protectors of sacred law. Two, and those who turned to the shadow, seeking control, immortality, dominance. They began using their technology not for balance, but for manipulation. They experimented with genetic hybrids, weaponized vibration, created energy fields that distorted the grid of Earth itself. The fall had begun, and it wasn't a punishment. It was the natural result of imbalance. In Part 3, we'll uncover how Atlantis fell, not just the flood, but the energy war that preceded it, and why the echoes of that collapse are still felt in our world today. Because Atlantis didn't just vanish, it echoed. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it repeating now. Atlantis didn't fall in one night. The flood was the finale, not the cause. The real collapse began long before the waters came. It started where most collapses begin, within. The Atlanteans had mastered energy, but they lost connection to soul. They pushed the boundaries of creation, but forgot the balance that held it together. The split between light and shadow widened. One half of Atlantis remained aligned, guardians of sacred law. The other half turned their knowledge into control. Their vibration shifted, their ethics decayed, their frequency fell. They began experimenting with genetics, blending human DNA with animal, elemental, even off-world species. Not for evolution, but for power. They created hybrids, biological machines, beings without soul anchoring. What began as sacred technology became forbidden science, and then came the Temple Wars. Centers of knowledge, once used for healing and light work, were repurposed for domination. Atlantean crystals, once tuned to the Earth's grid for harmony, were retuned to extract energy. Weaponized frequency, they began disrupting planetary ley lines, creating energetic distortion fields, bending Earth's vibration to their will. And the planet responded. Earth is not passive, it is alive, and when the balance is broken, it corrects. Volcanic activity increased, magnetics began to shift, the skies darkened. Atlantean elders warned them. But the Shadow faction didn't listen. They had grown too arrogant, convinced they had mastered the gods themselves. And then, it happened. The central crystal, known in mystery texts as the Great Firestone, was pushed beyond its limit. A misalignment, a ripple through the grid, and the entire network collapsed. Within hours, the land began to fall. The seas rose, tectonic plates shifted, Earth reclaimed what had been abused, and Atlantis sank, not just physically, but energetically. But that wasn't the end, because not everyone perished. The Lightkeepers, those who held the original codes, had seen the collapse coming. They evacuated, they scattered, they carried the memory across oceans. To Egypt, Mesoamerica, Tibet, India, the British Isles, and beyond. And they hid the knowledge, waiting for a time when we'd be ready to remember. In Part 4, we'll reveal where the survivors went, how they seeded new civilizations, what knowledge they preserved, and why traces of Atlantis still echo through ancient temples, pyramids, and myths worldwide. Atlantis never truly disappeared. It reincarnated. And if you've found this message, it might be waking up inside you. If these hidden truths are awakening something inside you, hit subscribe and tap the bell. Your memory is just beginning to return. The flood came. The cities fell. The ocean claimed the land. But Atlantis didn't die, because knowledge cannot drown. It travels. It hides. It waits. Before the collapse, a group of Atlantean initiates, keepers of the ancient knowledge, fled. They knew what was coming, and they had a plan. They carried the sacred symbols, the energy codes, the memory of the stars, and they scattered across the earth to seed new beginnings. Let's trace their path. Egypt, perhaps the most well-known survival point. These weren't Egyptians as we know them. They were the pre-dynastic teachers who brought sacred geometry, advanced astronomy, energy temples, the knowledge of Thoth. The pyramids? Not tombs. frequency devices built with Atlantean precision. Thoth, known also as Hermes Trismegistus, was said to be an Atlantean priest-king who preserved the emerald tablets. Mesoamerica. In places like Teotihuacan, Tikal, and Palenque, mystery schools emerged with strikingly similar architecture and star knowledge. The Maya and Olmec carried encoded calendars. The Aztecs spoke of gods who came from the waters. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, was not a myth. He was a memory. India and Tibet. Vedic texts speak of flying machines, vimanas, epic wars with energy weapons, and divine teachers who arrived from the sky. Atlantis echoes through the Mahabharata, where the fall of a golden age plays out like a cosmic warning. In Tibet, hidden in the Himalayas, mystics still guard pre-human teachings, accessed only by those who carry the right vibration. Europe and the British Isles. The Druids spoke of lost lands across the sea. Stone circles like Stonehenge mimic Atlantean geometries. Ley lines, Earth's energy veins, map the same grid Atlantis once amplified. These weren't isolated cultures. They were echoes of a single origin. And here's the truth. These survivors didn't come to dominate. They came to guide, to teach, to plant seeds of remembrance. Each culture held a piece. No one had the whole, because the knowledge was too powerful to be held by any one hand again. They encoded it in symbols, stone, myth, mathematics, mystery schools, initiation rituals, waiting for a time when we would wake up and put the pieces back together. That time is now. In Part 5, we'll explore the real reason this story was erased from modern history, who benefits from our amnesia, and what happens when a civilization forgets where it came from. Because forgetting isn't natural, it's engineered. And the story of Atlantis was never just lost. It was buried. If Atlantis was real, if its people seeded the ancient world, if their knowledge still echoes through pyramids, temples, and texts, then why were we told it was a myth? Why was it reduced to fantasy, buried under ridicule and denial? Because forgetting isn't accidental. It's engineered. The deeper you look, the more one thing becomes clear. Someone, somewhere, didn't want us to remember. Why? Because Atlantis is more than a story. It's a mirror, a warning, a blueprint. And if we remembered it fully, we'd also remember what we are capable of. Modern history, what you learned in school, is a curated script. It's been rewritten to serve one goal: control. Control over time. Control over truth. Control over consciousness. Because if you forget your origin, you forget your power. Let's break it down. The Atlanteans accessed energy, healing, and knowledge that makes today's technology look primitive. They were sovereign beings, not dependent, not confused, not compliant. Now compare that to the world we live in. Disconnected from nature, addicted to devices, spiritually silenced, distracted, divided, and domesticated. See the pattern? Atlantis isn't just a lost city. It's a forbidden template, and those who've held power across empires, religions, and institutions knew that if humanity ever remembered, they would lose control. So they buried it. Under lies, under legends, under coincidence. They mocked it in movies. They diluted it in pop culture. They erased it from textbooks. And they told you it never existed. But the memory never fully died. It lived in symbols, in dreams, in temples aligned with stars, in the whispers of mystics and intuitives. And now, it's waking up again. Because no matter how deep you bury truth, when the vibration is right, it rises. And now that you're remembering, the question becomes, what will you do with it? Will you go back to sleep? Or will you begin to see the world through different eyes? Because once you see the manipulation, you begin to break it. And once you break it, you reclaim your sovereignty. In Part 6, We'll close this journey with the real reason Atlantis matters today, how its fall mirrors our current world, what it means for your personal awakening, and why this isn't just ancient history. It's your soul's history, and it's time to remember what you came here to do. So now you know. Atlantis wasn't a fantasy. It was real, it was advanced, and it collapsed. Not because of war or weather alone, but because of imbalance. Imbalance between mind and soul, technology and heart, power and wisdom. And that imbalance? It's happening again. Look around. A world driven by profit over people. A culture addicted to distraction. A planet poisoned in the name of progress. Artificial intelligence rising without spiritual grounding. This is the Atlantis pattern, repeating. But here's the difference. This time, you're awake. This time, you remember. This time, we choose differently. The story of Atlantis matters because it's not just ancient history. It's a reflection of your own soul's journey. Some of you lived there. Some of you fell there. Some of you came back to finish what was started. The echoes you feel, the memories that rise, the chills when you hear its name, they're not coincidence. They're activation. So what now? You don't have to build pyramids. You don't need crystals or codes. What's required now is consciousness. Start with you. Heal your own inner imbalance. Reconnect to the earth. Ground your power in compassion. Walk with integrity. Speak with truth. Live with remembrance. That's how we break the cycle. Not by escaping the world, but by elevating it. You are not here to observe history. You are here to rewrite it. The knowledge of Atlantis is returning not to impress you, but to remind you, you've done this before. You know what happens next. And you are here now to choose another way. This time, we don't fall. This time, we rise. Let this be your memory. Atlantis was real. Its wisdom lives on. And now, it lives through you.